this year for the first time that is certainly clearly apparent. Without restructuring the lower CO2 bands, progressively more and more cars will be in the lowest taxation classes, and differentiated rates of tax and a mechanism to drive further environmental improvements would no longer be available. The changes we have made with an 80-gram floor for the A1 band will continue to provide an incentive to both the trade and the consumer to buy the lowest emission cars. A car at 80 grams represents a 33% increase in fuel efficiency and the same decrease in CO2 emissions compared to a 120-gram car. We're now refreshing the signal to the market that maximum ambition in reduction in emissions continues to be the aim. The negative impact on the public finances, the net result of the introduction of the CO2-based system, is that the average car entering the national fleet is now 22% more energy efficient than was the case prior to rebalancing of vehicle taxation in 2008. And this is welcome. It will continue to be an essential objective of motor taxation, but maintenance of the revenue base is also essential in current circumstances. Some purchasers of cars taxed on the basis of CO2 emissions may describe themselves as feeling cheated. It should be borne in mind that despite this being the second increase in 2 years, the vast majority of cars taxed on the basis of their CO2 emissions still have tax rates that remain below the tax they would pay under the older system based on engine capacity. In restructuring the carbon banding, we have also maintained the basic structure of the tax, and indeed improved the relative benefits of those who have bought or will buy in the future the most efficient cars available in the market. In order that the budget increases generated the necessary revenue as part of our approach to expenditure savings and tax increases, it hasn't been possible either to exempt from increases those older cars based on engine capacity that still make up 3/4 of the private car fleet, or indeed to exempt commercial vehicles. However, it should be noted that the rate of increase for these categories is less than the average for the CO2 fleet. Deputy Cowan and others raised the issue of climate change, and as I've said, these matters will be dealt with in the near future, and we'll be bringing forward the next Secretariat report as well as part of our publication of the heads of the bill, hopefully next week. Deputy Cowan also raised the issue of fuel prices. There's no increase in the price of petrol or diesel in budget 2013. Nor was there an increase in VAT or carbon tax on transport fuels, both of which would affect the price of the pumps. In budget 2013, my colleague, the Minister of Finance, announced a rebate on diesel, which is a decrease, with effect from the 1st of July 2013 for the transport sector, and extended that to the bus sector in the recent finance bill. I think that's welcome. I'd also like to reiterate that the Government's committee is very committed to the local government fund. And despite the fact that the amount to be transferred from the fund to the Exchequer is higher than last year, income retained in the fund for local services following the transfer will be the same as last year. And as the fund is not permitted to run an overdraft, the payment to the Exchequer will be limited to the balance of the fund at the end of this year, when all other funding commitments have been met, or to €150 million, whichever is the lesser. The amount will be decided later in the year in consultation with Minister Howlett. Now, many speakers talked about the various ways of how we're going to get the necessary resources for local government. And I want to take the opportunity of thanking the people who contributed to the household charge in 2012. 72% of the people, the silent majority again, decided to accept what the government wished to do in order to pay in excess of €117 million against the wishes of Deputy Murphy and others. A fact that this particular money was being brought for the purpose of providing local services. Don't be reorientating the debate now once you've lost. 72%, the silent majority, are on our side, and they want to make sure that they want to be legally compliant with it. They want to be legally compliant.
We'll stay with this bill.
And sure, Deputy Murphy, you have people that are in rural areas in Kildare as well that you represent. 82% of the people registered for their septic tank, and some people who advocated that they shouldn't pay their septic tank charge last September have cost people €45. I didn't hear you mention that. They're paying €50 in the last couple of weeks. They could have paid €5 by the end of September last if they wish to register. But people advocated that they shouldn't register. Well, your group, your technical group, of which are you a member of the technical group?
Yeah.
Through the chair.
Equalisation, it does when it suits. Equalisation remains a core principle of the general purpose grant allocation process. The amount of funding for equalisation in 2012 reflected the need to ensure, in an environment where all local authority revenue sources are under pressure, that local authorities have the resources to provide a reasonable level of services. And I remain committed to the principle of equalisation in its allocation for general purpose grants. In the current difficult financial circumstances for local authorities, it is critical that all citizens and all customers can expect a reasonable level of service provision from their local authority, notwithstanding what we have mentioned in relation to property tax, 65% be initially retained by the local authority. Now, I agree with all deputies in the House that mentioned about the difficulties with local roads. This is a very serious problem that's getting more difficult, and I've been in discussions with the Minister for Transport about even greater flexibility about projects and about expenditure that he would allocate to the local government system. Local authorities have a lot of discretion already in certain funds, but not in all funds. And the Minister has been in contact with the County and City Managers Association in recent times to see what could be done in order to ensure that we have a basic level of maintenance for roads that have been articulated particularly by Deputy Cowan and that were replicated right throughout the country because of the very difficult weather that we've had, particularly in relation to rainfall in the last couple of winters, that are now taking its toll on the condition of local roads. And we're very conscious of that, and we're trying to see how we can help local authorities to assist them within their existing financial framework. I just asked somebody to check out the Toyota Yaris that Deputy Murphy asked about. I've just got a note, just maybe you were overcharged. For a pre-2008 Yaris or equivalent below 1000 cc, the rate of increase in this budget is €14. But for a post-2008 Yaris or similar, taxed on the basis of CO2, the increase for 111 grams to 120 grams per kilometre was €40, and for 121 gram to 130 gram kilometre was €45. So you confused me a bit with the 50. So maybe that information, maybe you might have to review the situation with your. Well, maybe you can go back to your local authority. You might be entitled to a refund based on this information. I hope you are. Every little helps. Deputy Healy mentioned about the rural transport service, and I'm very conscious of the very good service that's been provided in Tipperary and in Kilkenny and the surrounding counties about the rural transport programme. It's administered by Pobal on behalf of the National Transport Authority. 35 rural transport groups, known as RTP groups, are currently being funded under the programme and managed by mainly voluntary management committees. Pobal makes specific funding allocations to the individual groups. Now, what Minister Kelly is doing, Deputy Healy, is having a look to see how we can actually integrate some of these services to the local government system. And we've set up a working group together to see maybe how local government and the existing service we could have. I know you're reading too much into it, and you're reading too much in the Irish. You're reading too much in the local paper. Well, if you listen, you learn to leave it. You're actually making the statement which you're in the absence of information. And we have a national committee set up to have a look at this, and I'm very conscious of what you have just said, Deputy Healy. It is important service, and people in rural area are expected and should expect to get a basic level of service as well in transport, in the absence of even a good road from Clonmel to Kilkenny. So there is, I think there is potential for a positive role for local government to be involved in many of our local services, and I don't think you would disagree with that, unless now you're going to abandon your support for Clonmel Borough Council. Making up for lost time. Yes. Well, many deputies want more finance, which is understandable, and more ways of raising money, perhaps, but they don't like the one we're discussing now. That's understandable in politics, I suppose. But protecting and providing the fund that we have to do the necessary improvements in the service, or even maintain the level of service we have now, is exactly what this bill is about. And if we didn't have this legislation, we wouldn't have the money in the fund to do the type of work that you've advocated. So it's, there's no easy way. There's no easy way. I know that Deputy Murphy and others and Deputy Healy advocate increases in income tax more on the working person, you know, that in order to get the level of finance that's necessary to run our services. We know what the so-called socialist party stand in relation to these issues.
Minister, to conclude, please.
We know that the socialists are against.
Conclude.
I know that Deputy Healy is against property tax. I'm surprised that socialists have been against property tax. But I haven't come across any easy way. Of raising revenue to provide services I haven't come across any suggestions either from Deputy Healy or anyone else from any other source except to increase income tax. So, you know, if you're against property tax, if you're against motor tax, if you're against everything, I suppose that's life in politics, but you certainly won't provide the services for the citizen, which is what this measure is seeking to do, and I commend the bill to the House.
I now put the question that the bill be now read a second time. Then the Chakti Riva Kesha, Abhijit Thaw, Chakti Nagunya Abhijit Neil, Sheila Magurin Kesh Richa. I think the question is carried. Question carried. I understand it is proposed to refer this bill to the Select Subcommittee on the Environment, Community and Local Government. Does the Minister wish to move the motion of referring now?
Now, I move.
Thank you. Is that agreed? Agreed. That concludes the second stage, and we now go on to topical issues. So, item 1, the regeneration of St Teresa's Garden, Dublin 8, with reference to departmental funding for the construction of 57 new housing units. Deputy Catherine Byrne has 4 minutes to make the initial statement.
Thank you very much, Lasky and Carla. And I want to begin by thanking the Carla for taking this debate today. Minister Hogan, as you're aware, since 1999, when I was elected to Dublin City Council, I've been deeply involved in the regeneration projects across the southwest inner city, including many places like St Michael's Estate, where I live close by, Fallon Mansions, Teresa's Gardens, Dolphin House, and many of them. I'm very concerned at this stage that, unfortunately, because of the fall of the public-private partnerships, some of the regeneration didn't happen, particularly in Michael's Estate, where I live myself. There's a wonderful job being done on Fallon Mansions, and now work has commenced on Teresa's Gardens. And I suppose for those who aren't familiar with Teresa's Gardens, in the 1950s, Dublin City Council, or Dublin Corporation at the time, built St Teresa's Gardens with 346 flats in 16 blocks, and also 10 houses and 10 shops. At the time, it was heralded as the greatest place to live, and indeed I know many people who were reared there down through the years and would still say the same today. However, since then, many problems have occurred within the flat complex, like dampness, mould, storage, development problems, and has fallen into poor estate repair. These problems are compounded by serious antisocial behaviour at times, criminal activity, drug dealing, and etc. And for the 120 residents living there, it has become some kind of a nightmare for them. The Regeneration Board was established in 2005 and spent several years working on a master plan for the redevelopment of the flat complex. The regeneration project was to be completed through public-private partnership, but the plan was abandoned in 2009 as this project and 4 other generation projects in the city fell victim to the recession and the demise of developer Brendan McNamara, who was to complete the projects at the time. It was devastating news to the residents and to the public representatives and to the wider community. Since then, the residents of Teresa's Gardens, for those of them left, have been left in limbo. The council has been unable to proceed due to funding, as you know yourself. The conditions have worsened. The tenanting process has kind of come to a halt at this stage, because really City Council find it very difficult to house their 120 residents. Last October, Dublin City Council started to develop the demolition of 2 of the blocks, 2 of the housing blocks, which has begun and has been completed. And recently, residents have been called to meetings in the last couple of months around the rebuilding of Teresa's Gardens, and been asked to consider refurbishment of 3 of the blocks there, which didn't go down very well at one of the meetings, I have to say myself, and the development of 57 new units, including 27 houses and 30 apartments.
Just 1 minute, Deputy.
But to me, this is still not really progress, because really no master plan has been produced at the moment and given to the people living there. Can the Minister clarify, however, at this time, that this project will proceed into the future, and how the Department is going to support it? Rumour has it that the Department of the Environment will be supplying funding to develop the 57 units which have been shown in a plan to the residents living locally. And I suppose at this stage, because of the time that has lapsed since 2009, people feel at this stage that an answer is needed, and I look forward to the Minister's reply.
Call the Minister to reply. 4 minutes.
I know that Deputy Catherine Byrne has an enormous interest in this issue and has been raising it on many occasions. And I just want to assure her that the Department also has a very great interest in seeing this project commenced and completed to the satisfaction of the residents. The programme of the National Regeneration Programme targets the country's most disadvantaged communities, and we support the ambitious programme of regeneration projects which seeks to address the causes of disadvantage in communities through a holistic programme of physical, social and economic generation. And of the €397 million spent in 2012 in the Housing Capital Programme, 25% of it was used to progress regeneration projects, and 50 million of this was spent on regeneration projects in Dublin, including Ballymun and the former PP projects such as Trees Gardens, or Devon Gardens, St Michael's Estate and Dolphin House. Now, as Deputy Byrne knows, Dublin City Council previously intended carrying out the development on the basis of a public-private partnership in Trees Gardens, and obviously, and to the great disappointment of everyone, public representatives and the citizens and the tenants living in the houses, certainly it was very disappointing that the public-private partnership model became non-viable. With the support of the Department of the Environment, the City Council established a special housing task force to see if there were alternative redevelopment options available. And as a result of this, the City Council submitted a draft scheme developed in consultation with the Regeneration Board of St Teresa's Gardens to the Department last year. The Department continues to work closely with the City Council to try and further those proposals, and Minister Sullivan visited St Teresa's Gardens last December to discuss the proposals with the relevant City Council officials and impressed on them the absolute necessity to finalise the master planning process and get the demolition and refurbishment programme underway. And as Deputy Byrne has said, initial works were carried out at St Teresa's Gardens. At the moment, the position is that the Department received the draft 2013 regeneration work programme from Dublin City Council, and this included a programme of demolition and refurbishment works at St Teresa's Gardens. Now, there are no firm proposals for the construction of the new homes yet in advance of the master plan, but the Department officials are meeting with Dublin City Council shortly to discuss this year's work programme, and regeneration proposals for St Teresa's Gardens will be high on the agenda.
Deputy Catherine Byrne has 2 minutes for a supplementary statement.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Minister. And I just want to acknowledge as well the Minister's commitment to regeneration and social agenda right across the country. I suppose it's not the news I was expecting, but anyway, we're here where we are. I suppose the disappointment of what happened with the fall of the public-private partnerships, I think, Minister, is a reflection on was a reflection on what happened in the economy, but also I felt, as somebody who served on the boards, as a reflection on many of the community groups who really, in my opinion, put the nail in the coffin for many of the regeneration boards that were to go ahead at the time. I do welcome the fact now that your department has received the new works programme from Dublin City Council, and I do look forward to continue working with yourself and with Dublin City Council to keep on the hopes of the people still living in Teresa's Gardens alive, that they will be able to have new homes, if not within Teresa's Gardens, but out in the wider community as well. And I do believe that, you know, this programme is long overdue, and I would hope that maybe some pressure could be put on the board at the moment to get on with the job, because they don't live there. The people do. Thanks.
With the Minister's 2 minutes to conclude.
I undertake to Deputy Byrne to make representations on behalf to the relevant officials in the Department of Housing and Planning, as well as to Dublin City Council, to express the concerns of the community in the wider area on the need to accelerate the regeneration of St Teresa's Gardens and that project. and I want to reiterate the commitment of Minister Sullivan and I to seeing this project implemented. Despite the funding challenges facing the government, we are committed to tackling the root cause of disadvantage in many of our large social housing estates and flat complexes. Regeneration is critical in this regard, and I hope that the Department will be in a position to announce details of the capital allocations for the regeneration programme very shortly. And I can assure Deputy Byrne that the level of funding from Dublin City for the Dublin City projects in 2013 will not act as a break in progress.
Margaret Dara. Could I ask, is the Minister taking other number two? Item number two, the report card of the Children's Rights Alliance. Deputy Robert Troy, 4 minutes to make an initial statement.
Thank you, Last Concordat, and can I thank the Concordat's office for giving me the opportunity to raise this important issue. Firstly, I want to acknowledge the Children's Rights Alliance giving the Government an A grade for the passage of the Children's Rights referendum. Although I would like to point out that the referendum was not just a government initiative, it had the support of 165 of the 166 TDs in this House, the support of the senators and of many, many children's organisations. Furthermore, with the debacle over the Department referendum website and leaflet, it could legitimately be argued that the Minister could have jeopardised the passage of this much-needed measure. However, it has passed and I welcome that. I also note that in the area of education, the Government gets a good mark too. Nonetheless, there are areas for concern, and I do hope in responding to the concerns I am raising, the Minister will concentrate his reply on those areas of concern. The fact is that despite the A grade on the referendum, the overall grade has slipped for the Government. If ever a government were to receive a high grade, it should be in the direct aftermath of passage of this referendum. This is the first full year of a full Cabinet Minister for Children, and it has seen an overall reduced rating. This is hardly an endorsement for the Department, and to me it is indicative that the Department is not working. The key failing is child poverty, with Budget 13 continuing under aggressive social policies of this Government. We spoke so much about child protection during the course of the referendum debate, and surely protection from poverty is a key form of child protection. As the report card says, the Government's successful or unsuccessful implementation of its programme for government fundamentally alters the climate in which children live and prosper. It plays an integral role as to whether a child thrives or wanes. The Government has the power to turn a series of events into a crisis, to escalate or de-escalate problems. Budget 2013 is a good example of this. The rollercoaster budget, including the cuts to child benefit payment and the back-to-school clothing and footwear allowance, devastated families. Consequently, the Alliance had no choice but to award the Government a fail, an F grade on this issue, the lowest grade given. Tanya Ward goes on to say in her introduction that cutting supports and services to vulnerable children and their families without any other reforms is short-sighted and will impact negatively on the lives of many vulnerable children and families. And I think the blanket cut across the board had a severe negative impact. And it's worth noting that this blanket cut was done despite the fact that in the Mangan Progress report in November 2011, prior to the Government's first budget, it said it considers the consequences of an uncompensated reduction in child benefit rates would be significant in terms of child poverty. Mangan report said that before the Government went and introduced that cut in the first budget and subsequently in their second budget. Health is also downgraded this year from C to D. In the primary care, there was an ongoing political debacle during 2012, slow progress in establishing primary care teams, and the funding for GP care was reallocated to make up for other financial deficits in the HSE. I suppose the positive steps in mental health were overshadowed by the fact that of the 35 million allocated, only approximately 6 million of this was spent. In relation to children with special education needs, that too saw a downgrade from C to D. And that was to reflect a lack of action on the commitment to further the implementation of the ESPN Act. This is despite the programme for despite the Programme for Government's commitment to publish a plan for the implementation of the ESPN Act. Also, in relation to the right to equality and non-discrimination, the Government scored an E+. That is a result of the delayed reform of family law and a failure to address the inequalities faced by children of unmarried parents, children with single fathers, etc. And little has been done to vindicate the rights of the traveller communities and of migrant children. Minister, in conclusion, I just want to say it isn't true that many of the failings identified in this report fall outside the immediate departmental remit of the Minister for Children and Youth Affairs. Nonetheless, there is a case to be made that she is lacking in influence, that the failings identified in this report show that her advocacy for children has been inadequate, and if it were not for the passage with the unanimous party political support, with the unanimous support of the children's rights agencies, the support for the referendum, the grade for this report would have been an awful lot worse. So what I want to hear today is how the Government will address the failings identified in this report, specifically where the Government has failed to honour their own commitments in their programme for government.
Calling the Minister 4 minutes also.
I thank Deputy Try for raising this issue, and I am pleased to respond on behalf of the Minister Fitzgerald, the Minister for Children and Youth Affairs, first Minister for Children and Youth Affairs at Cabinet level, who was returning from Russia following discussions on the possibility of a bilateral agreement on inter-country adoption with the Russian Federation. And I am disappointed with Deputy Try's negativity regarding many issues relating to children, and in fact question the existence of the Department itself. The House will be aware that the Children's Rights Alliance is a coalition of over 100 organisations working to secure the rights of children in Ireland by campaigning for the full implementation of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. The most recognised piece of standalone work in recent years has been the Children's Rights Report Card series, which examines the Government's performance or non-performance, as the case may be, in relation to its own commitments to children in the areas of education, health, material well-being and safeguarding childhood. The CRA published its annual report card 2013 on Monday last. It's the 5th edition of its annual report card series. Report card 2013 evaluates the Government and its progress during 2012 in meeting its commitments to children, as set out in the 2012 or 2011 Programme for Government. This is awarded an overall C grade. The Department of Children and Youth Affairs has positive working relationships with the CRA and the wider NGO body. The CRA is represented on a number of committees relating to the work programme of the Department and the Government's wider programme of work for children and young people. The Department provided information to the CRA on many of the items which relate to its specific areas of responsibility, and this is reflected in the final report. Overall, the grades reflective of the work of the Department of Children and Youth Affairs are positive. Grade B, overall grade B for Chapter 5, and in a number of cases demonstrate improvements in previous years. This is reflective of the priority attaching to this issue not only in the Department of Children and Youth Affairs but across government as articulated in the Programme for Government. Notably, the Government was awarded an A grade in respect to the children's referendum. I want to thank Deputy Try for his party's support in relation to that matter. It hasn't been put to the Irish people before, and you'd wonder why. I would now like to comment on some of the different areas referred to in the CRA report card that relate specifically to the Department of Children and Youth Affairs. The Child and Family Support Agency is at the heart of the Government's reform of child and family services. The Government has decided that Child Welfare and Protection Services will transfer from the HSE to this new agency. It has also decided that services of the Family Support Agency will similarly transfer. The establishment of a single agency incorporating key children's services will provide a focus for the major reforms already underway. The agency, upon establishment, will assume full statutory responsibility for a range of child and family services currently provided by 3 separate agencies: the HSE, the Family Support Agency and the National Education and Welfare Board. Last July saw the publication of the report of a task force on the establishment of the Child and Family Support Agency. Following consideration of the task force's detailed recommendations, the Government in November approved the general scheme and heads of the bill. Drafting of the legislation to establish the agency in line with the general scheme is at an advanced stage. This will be a very comprehensive piece of legislation, providing as it does for subsuming functions from 3 separate agencies and assigning very onerous responsibilities in relation to the care and protection of children and the promotion of their welfare. Subject to finalisation and approved by Government is the Minister's intention to present the legislation to the Oireachtas during the current term. When established, the agency will constitute one of the largest public agencies in the state, with staff of over 4,000 employees and a budget of over €550 million. It represents one of the largest and most ambitious areas of public sector reform currently underway.
I have to say to the Minister that there's just a minute remaining out of the replies.
Right.
Lengthy reply.
There are a number of areas that the Minister has asked me to convey to the House last Concordia in relation to this matter, and one of them as well is since assuming responsibility for children detention in January 2012, the Minister has worked with her colleagues in government on a range of actions to improve conditions for children in detention, to end the practice of detaining children in St Patrick's institution and to transfer those children to Overstown. And that Minister announced a capital investment package in April 2012 to achieve that in Lusk. And it will result in sufficient capacity to extend the childcare model of detention to all young people under the age of 18 years by mid-2014. In consultation with our colleague, the Minister for Justice, we wish to extend, she will be extending the remit of the Ombudsman for Children from July 2012 to include all boys less than 18 years of age detained in St Patrick's Institution. So there are a number of other issues which have yet to be implemented as part of the 5-year term of office of the Government, and we look forward to working with the Children's Rights Alliance and other NGOs in achieving those objectives.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. Minister, I acknowledge the positives in this report, and I said that from the very outset, and they're to be acknowledged and to be welcomed. But the overall C grade which this government got from this report is a slip on the grade that you got last year. And this is in a year when, for the first time, as you said, we had a full Cabinet Minister with responsibility for child and youth affairs sitting at the Cabinet table. Why is that? And I say that the slip would have been an awful lot worse were it not for the passage of the children's referendum, which had cross-party support and had support right across the NGOs and the Children's Rights Alliance and the group that associated with that. Minister, you've not once mentioned the fact of child poverty, where the government failed. They got a fail in relation to child poverty, and your reply never once acknowledged that. In relation to health, in relation to mental health, your reply didn't once acknowledge that. You talk about the new Child and Family Support Agency, which we support, by the way, the establishment of such agency. The legislation, in order to give that and put that on a statutory footing, was meant to be passed by December 2012. We've yet to see the heads of bill, let alone have it go through this House, the Houses of the Oireachtas. Quite an important piece of legislation. You talk about the Children First guidelines. The heads of the bill was brought to committee last May or June. They've yet to come before the Houses of the Oireachtas and be implemented. So the Minister, with all due respects, is not up to her job. She's not the advocacy that she should be in terms of children's rights. I've said the greatest thing of all is if you can't keep children out of poverty, well, that's a very sad reflection, truly, and it's even an awful reflection that you haven't even acknowledged it in your contribution here today, Minister.
Well, as Cathaoirleach, as Deputy Try knows, the most effective way of getting any individual out of poverty is to provide employment. And the pattern of difficult decisions that this government has had to make arising from the legacy that we inherited from your party has made it enormously difficult to ensure that we had a domestic economy that is growing because of the measures that had to be taken to deal with our public finances. So child poverty and adult poverty are all interlinked with the provision of jobs, and I would look forward to working with you to ensure that we do increase the level of economic activity arising from recent decisions made by the European Central Bank and the government in order to give us some breathing space on the financial side. I could also say to the Deputy that child benefit has been reduced by your own party as well, 2010, when times got difficult in terms of our public finances. So the increases of previous years certainly were eroded, but there is a substantial amount of support being given for the assistance to children still, notwithstanding the difficult financial position that we have in this country. And finally, would I say that the establishment of the Family and Child Support Agency will provide the focus that Deputy Try is advocating for issues relating to mental health and issues relating to outstanding issues in the programme for government that are not attained yet, but will be, in my view, many of them, addressed during the course of the next year in the context of the legislation. I have already explained to you where the stages of the legislation are at, that the principal part of that legislation that you advocated is being published in this term, and we look forward to your support for it.
Thank you, Minister. The next question is in the name of Deputy Bruhan, and it's to the Minister for Justice and Equality. The introduction of measures to ensure the robustness of the system to endorse the licences of motorists who have incurred penalty points for driving offences.
Thanks, well, as you know, Minister, Section 63 of the 2010 Road Traffic Act requires that when a person is alleged to have committed a road traffic offence, they must produce their driver licence and a photocopy of the licence when they're appearing in court. And there are fines of €1,000 or €2,000 and indeed a term of imprisonment of not exceeding 3 months for failure to produce the licence. This very important legislative measure was enacted in October 28, 2011, and it closed a loophole in the earlier legislation where a person who was convicted of a road traffic offence could avoid it having recorded on their licence and therefore avoid penalty points by simply failing to bring their licence to court. And without the licence, of course, it can't be put on the National Vehicle Driver file. And there were even outrageous suggestions that people were advised sometimes not to bring their licence to court so that points couldn't be applied. In April 2012, Evening Herald journalist, investigative journalist Niall O'Connor, he estimated that around 85,000 motorists had managed to avoid penalty points by simply arriving in court without their licence. And this is a particularly unacceptable situation for repeat offenders who may have been getting away without any penalty for numerous speeding offences and then subsequently may have ended up in a very serious crash. It's been noted that the relatively low number of drivers also on 12 points, 133 drivers, Minister, on 31st of March 2012, could be influenced by the fact that there is seemingly a high level of avoidance of points through the non-production of a licence. Since the enactment of Section 63 in 2011, the Park Promoting Road Safety Group, it's a national road safety campaign standingly led by Ms Susan Gray and Ms Anne Fogarty, they battled to try to get this Section 63 implemented across the court system, and they've attended district court hearings around the country in relation to this. In a report they made to me, I think, and to the two ministers concerned, Minister Varadkar and Minister Shatter, they said they found a vast difference in procedures in some courts with little consistency, and in fact the application of penalty points seems to be a geographical lottery, Minister. In Donegal, Galway and Cork, for example, in the district courts, many drivers who were summoned to court on road traffic penalty point offences, including speeding, were convicted, but not one driver in those courts was asked to present their licence or a photocopy of the licence to be passed on to the NVDF. Recently, Park attended the Cork District Court this very month, and were able to say that no drivers on speeding and traffic offences were asked to hand up their licences in court, although many were convicted on penalty point offences. And there seemed to be no procedure for taking licence details or sending information to NVDF. Similarly, in sittings of the Donegal District Court, I think at Letterkenny and Galway District Court, the same thing appeared to be happening. In contrast, Minister, in sittings of the Dublin District Court 2011-2012, drivers were requested at the very start of the proceeding to bring up their licence and a copy, and the clerk took the details and returned the licence to the driver. Similarly, in a number of Dún Laoghaire court sittings which are witnessed, all drivers were requested at the beginning of the court to hand up their licence, and on conviction the court clerk took all the details manually. So there seems to be a huge discrepancy in this regard, and it's disappointing that the difficulty continues even though from May 16 to 2012 all summonses were amended to inform drivers that they must produce their licences in court, and I understand that there are subsequently courts did put up notices to this effect about Section 63. But as campaigners note, of course, it will make little difference if drivers are not being made to produce their licences and are not aware of the related fines for doing so. Of course, the court service staff are under extraordinary pressure due to some of the economic policies, unfortunately, of your government, Minister, but it has to be said that this is a very key area, given, for example, the last 2 months that we've had a significant increase in deaths on our roads. We're heading back down, unfortunately, into the kind of much higher figures we had in earlier years. So it does seem to be a geographical lottery, Minister. It's very unfair in particular, and you and other deputies here today, we might have represented or people that came to us and asked us what were they to do. Professional drivers who had gone to 12 points, how were they going to earn a living and so on in the Greater Dublin region, and then they were put off the road. And yet in other parts of the country there's a different standard, and it does seem to be...
Deputy, I'll come back to you, but your time is up.
Yeah, and district courts, they should obey the law.
Thanks, Deputy. Minister has 4 minutes to respond.
Thank you, Cahirley. And on behalf of the Minister for Justice and Equality and Defence, I wish to thank the Deputy for raising this matter, and I'm dealing with the issue on behalf of my colleague, Minister Shatter. As the Deputy is aware, legislation in this area is the responsibility of the Minister for Transport, Tourism and Sport. Section 63 of the Road Traffic Act 2010 provides that it is an offence not to produce a driving licence or permit and a copy of the licence or permit to the court when appearing there to answer an accusation or a charge of commission of a specified offence under the Road Traffic Acts 1961 to 2010. The Deputy will appreciate that the courts are of course subject to the Constitution and the law, independent of the exercise of their judicial functions, and the conduct of any court case is a matter for the presiding judge. Since May 2012, the Court Service has put in place arrangements to ensure that the summonses issued include wording to advise persons charged with an offence under the Road Traffic Acts to bring their driving licence together with a photocopy of the licence when they are attending court. The Minister for Justice is informed that the Service has communicated with the Judiciary to facilitate an arrangement whereby defendants who appear before the court are requested in court to produce their driving licence and a copy thereof to the court registrar for the purpose of having the driving licence number recorded. In addition, registrars have been requested to record whether or not the licence or a copy thereof was produced to the court. Where the driving licence number is recorded and, on conviction, the details are provided to the Department of Transport, Tourism and Sport. The Court Service has advised the Minister that the revised summonses issued from May 2012 began appearing in court lists in September 2012, and initial statistics show a small increase in the number of driving licence numbers collected since the new procedures were introduced. However, the Service has also informed the Minister that it is, at this stage, too early to draw definitive conclusions, as the systems put in place require further time to become fully effective. In relation to cases where the driving licence number has not been produced, the Service has indicated that they are continuing to evaluate the systems in place to ensure that they are fully functional to, in due course, provide An Garda Síochána with the necessary information to initiate prosecutions. The Service has informed the Minister that work is ongoing in this area, and it has undertaken to provide a further update on the arrangements by the end of July 2013. The Minister will consider the matter further when he receives that report, and the Minister hopes that the Deputy will appreciate that every effort is being made by the Court Service, as is proper, insofar as is possible within its remit, to ensure the robustness of the systems in place to ensure compliance with the provisions of Section 63 of the Road Traffic Act 2010. On behalf of the Minister for Justice and Equality and Defence, I would like to thank the Deputy once again for raising this matter, and the Minister does appreciate the Deputy's interest in relation to the administration of the courts.
Deputy.
Can the Minister or could the Minister for Justice contact me in relation to how many points have not been recorded on the National Vehicle Driver File due to this non-production of the driving licence, to this scandal that's been going on for some time? The Minister told me in last September that he'd have a report on the implementation of Section 63 by the end of November last year, and he subsequently said that that report wouldn't be available now until July. And why is this delay, and why can't we have this information as soon as possible, Minister? And does the Minister himself, is he aware, or has the Department of Justice made an attempt to watch proceedings like the Park Group have done? In fact, they're very socially, I think, contributing citizens to the extent that they have done all of this. And they did send a detailed submission, I know, on the matter to Minister Varadkar just a few days ago, and they're looking for a reply for that. There's also similar problems, Minister, when drivers are disqualified for serious or repeat driving offences, and again, that they're usually they send their licence to the local motor tax office, and surely it would be better to produce it again in court. As I said, this whole matter is surely it's a massive waste of Garda resources. The fact that the Guards have done such a great job in bringing drivers who committed road traffic offences to court, and that sanctions have been applied, and then the court system has let us down. Surely there's a case to answer here for the Minister for Justice, particularly in relation to current controversies in relation to the operation of An Garda Síochána. And last point, in relation to insurance, Minister Varadkar has said that he'll make the database of penalty points available to insurance companies. Again, isn't this very unfair, particularly to those regions of the country where penalty points have been implemented, as against areas where apparently you didn't have to get your penalty points even though you had committed the same offence? So is there gross unfairness there? And Minister Bradker needs to look into that area. But thanks.
Deputy Minister to respond to
yes, thank you, Curly. As I've indicated to the Deputy, the report to which he refers will be available, or at least the information, I should say, in the statistics will be available in July of 2013. I think the difficulty is that the period of time since the new procedures was put in place isn't yet sufficiently long for the data to be collated and properly presented. That's as I understand it. But certainly, I think we would all agree with the Deputy that there should be a uniform application of the law and of the requirements across the state. Certainly that is the case. I think everybody would agree with that. With regard to the Minister's role, though, I think the Deputy will, acknowledge that the Minister is doing everything within his power. He has emphasised to the court service that there is a legal requirement which should be enforced. The courts, nevertheless, are subject only to the Constitution and the law. The Minister doesn't have a supervisory role over the courts in the way that has been suggested. It's not open to the Minister to supervise the courts in the way perhaps other people might monitor and keep an eye. It's not open to the Minister to do that. So what the Minister will do is prepare this information, make it available in July 2013, and I think we'd all have to accept that the system is still bedding down. But the overall view expressed by the Deputy that there should be uniform application and proper application of the procedures and the law is certainly shared by the Minister.
Thank you, Minister. And the next topical issue is in the name of Deputy Derek Keating, and it's to the Minister for Justice and Equality too. The need to ensure a safeguard the fleet, particularly in view of the situation in Clondalkin and Garda Station.
Thank you very much, Cathaoirleach. And I'd like to take the opportunity of thanking the Ceann Comhairle for giving me this opportunity of discussing a matter that is, I believe, of national interest. It is a matter that has been under considerable scrutiny, had considerable discussion recently, and I regret to say has been the subject of a lot of misinformation in this House and beyond. Not least of all, I'm reminded of some of the comments made by Deputy Mattie McGrath in relation to the said issue of Garda transportation, Garda cars and Garda fleet. I'd like to ask the Minister here today that what is the current situation regarding the upgrading of the Garda cars and other equipment that's necessary for the Gardaí and the performance of their daily duties? And is it not a fact, Cathaoirleach, that the previous administration, led by Fianna Fáil, actually put Garda's lives at risk by virtue of the fact, and it's my understanding, Minister, that many of the Garda fleet was left in a situation where it was run down to the point that many of those vehicles, that if they were brought before the NCT testing, that they would actually fail that process. And I'd like to ask the Minister to follow on from what the Taoiseach himself said in this House yesterday morning in the subject of leaders' questions. What provisions that he has made available to upgrade the Garda fleet? And will the Minister comment on what he inherited, what the Minister for Justice inherited, when he took office in relation to the vehicles and the equipment? And would the Minister once and for all outline to this House what his plans are to correct this mess that he inherited, and what the time frame for that is, and what works does he envisage and what works he has planned? I'm very disappointed that, given the serious nature of this and what the Minister has inherited, there's nobody here from Fianna Fáil even to bear witness to this discussion today, given some of the comments that have already been made. Thank you, Cathaoirleach.
Thank you, Deputy. And the Minister has 4 minutes to respond.
Clearly, and Minister Shatter has asked me to thank the Deputy for raising this matter in the House this afternoon. I'm dealing with the matter on the Minister's behalf. Decisions in relation to the provision and deployment of Garda transport are principally matters for the Garda Commissioner. Such decisions are based on the Commissioner's identified operational requirements and the availability of resources. At Garda divisional level, it is for the Chief Superintendent to make appropriate arrangements for the distribution of vehicles throughout the division in response to policing demands. The Deputy will appreciate that a degree of flexibility in allocating and reallocating vehicles among stations, so as to best match the allocation of resources with policing priorities, is crucial to the efficient management of the Garda fleet. The Minister has been advised by the Garda authorities that the deployment of Garda transport is determined on the basis of ongoing analysis and review of the policing needs of each division to ensure that resources are utilised to optimum advantage to meet the operational demands upon the force. Garda patrol vehicles are taken out of service for a variety of reasons, including as a result of accidents or where the odometer reading reaches the safety limit set by the relevant manufacturer. In that regard, the safety of Garda personnel and the public is a priority for the Garda authorities. The Minister has also been informed that at present there are 111 Garda vehicles attached to the Dublin Metropolitan West Division, of which 23 are allocated to the Clondalkin Garda District. With specific regard to the issues raised by the Deputy, the Minister has been informed by the Garda authorities that the current allocation of vehicles provided for the Clondalkin District makes the best use of the available resources. In addition, they have indicated that a comprehensive policing service is being delivered within the district and to the communities it serves. And specifically in relation to some of the information sought by the Deputy, the Minister is of course aware of the demands which are placed on the Garda fleet, and in that context the Minister has made an additional €3 million available to An Garda Síochána towards the end of last year, enabling the Commissioner to procure a further 171 Garda vehicles. This has brought total investment in the fleet in 2012 to €4 million and resulted in a total of 213 new vehicles being procured throughout that year. The introduction of the most recently purchased transport is ongoing, and the Deputy can be assured that the vehicles will be deployed as effectively as possible in line with operational circumstances, including the policing needs of the Clondalkin District. In addition, a further allocation of €5 million has been provided for the purchase and fit-out of Garda transport in 2013. This represents a very considerable financial investment in Garda transport, particularly at a time when the level of funding available across the public sector is severely limited. It is a clear indication of the Minister's commitment to ensure that, to the greatest extent possible, An Garda Síochána are provided with the appropriate resources to enable them to provide an effective and efficient policing service.
Thanks. Deputy, did you want to come back with a supplementary?
Well, I want to thank the Minister of State, and I'd ask him to convey my thanks to the Minister for Justice, because I think this has been not only a comprehensive report, but indeed a very revealing report. An additional €3 million last year, the previous year, an additional €4 million in 2012, and an estimated additional €5 million in 2013. I really do think that, and I'm very mindful of the pressures that the Minister is under, and all the other departments, because of the limited resources that are available, particularly because of what we inherited as a government, and trying to put our public finances in order, and at the same time recognising the need to provide the Gardaí with the additional resources, recognising the pressures that many people throughout the country, in Dublin and beyond, are under in terms of their personal safety. And I'm hoping that this report from the Minister will put paid to that misinformation that I referred to earlier on, which has been most unhelpful and offered people very little comfort. I want to conclude by saying this, and particularly in the important days that are in it. I've worked in my community, in the community development, and particularly in the voluntary sector, for the last 35 years of my life, and now 14 years in public life, 2 years in the Dáil, and 12 years at local authority. And at all times during that period, I've worked very closely with the Gardaí. And I have to say, it saddens me and it concerns me that in the days that are in it, when we are prioritising our work and putting our finances in order, that there are many Gardaí that I work closely with and respect, and I know of their concerns, I hear of their stories, and I know of their situations. I think it's important that everybody focus their attention in being at the negotiation table, in entering the discussions, and leaving aside the placards and the protests for the moment, and giving those negotiations every possible opportunity. And I think if everybody plays their part in that, there's every chance that we'll have the opportunity of hearing of their concerns and finding a solution as we go forward. Thank you.
Minister, did you want to reply? Just
Briefly,
yeah.
I really can't put the matter any further than has been put by the Deputy himself, and just to emphasise once again that these are additional resources. that are being procured and being made available, and that perhaps the most important type of resource that the Gardaí require and need in order to do the job that we expect them to do are mobile resources, and that is the nature of the policing that they're required to carry out. As to finally, clearly, whether the provision on the record of accurate information is likely to put paid to the dissemination of inaccurate information, I'm not really sure, although I share the Deputy's hope in that regard, but I wouldn't be holding my breath.
Thank you very much. And that brings topical issues to a conclusion for today. And the next item is questions to the Minister for Jobs, Enterprise and Innovation. And the first question is in the name of Deputy Derek Cleary. Question number 1.
Thank you very much, over the past number of months, I've been working with my colleagues in government on compiling the 2013 Action Plan for Jobs. The plan has been approved by government and will be launched in the coming days. I should point out that the plan was introduced against a background where an average of 90,000 jobs per year were being lost in the economy. The challenge is to facilitate a transition from an economy that was built on unsustainable pillars of property and debt to one built on enterprise, innovation and exports. It has always been made clear that this will not mean a fixed number of new jobs in each of the years of the plan. Too many elements of the economy need to be fixed in this early period to undo the damage caused. Some measures in the Action Plan for Jobs will include specific job creation targets, whereas others will contribute to improving the operating environment, which will support the creation of jobs by the enterprise sector. The objective of the Action Plan for Jobs process is to create a supportive environment for business so that they can retain existing jobs and create new ones. We are transforming our economy step by step by taking measures across all government departments and many state agencies to remove administrative burdens on business, improve their access to finance, further improve our export performance and support the development of key growth sectors. One of the significant benefits of the approach taken in the Action Plan is that it has got agencies and departments right across government to put forward measures that are making it easier for enterprises to develop opportunities and create employment. However, most of such actions are not of a character where departments would have a specific job target.
Thank you, Gareth. Thank the Minister for his answer. Minister, the difficulty is that you say that the Action Plan for Jobs is a series of broad measures without specific targets. But the difficulty is the programme for government and you and your colleagues in government have made a commitment to create 100,000 new jobs by 2016. But the live register figures are not moving. And those 400,000 people who are on the live register are looking to the Action Plan for Jobs to say, is there something for me in this? Is there some sort of pathway for me within this Action Plan for Jobs? And I gather a 2013 edition is being launched tomorrow, and there'll be great fanfare and great talk. But what is the actual specifics that you can say to somebody who is on that live register and who wants to work, that they're going to be given some sort of hope? And also, the Action Plan for Jobs and the fanfare that will come tomorrow, it tends to clash with the medium-term fiscal strategy, which seems to take a lot more sober assessment in terms of job creation and net job creation by 2013. And is it still your target and the government's target that there be 100,000 net jobs created by 2016?
Well, I think the Action Plan for Jobs does have very concrete measures that you can see improvement in that, if you take the overall employment performance in this economy, as I outlined in my reply, when we came into government, the average job loss in the private sector was 90,000 jobs per year. In the last 12 months, we have seen an expansion in private sector employment by 12,000. You can see the sectors that are driving that. They are the export-oriented sectors that we have put our main emphasis on in the plan. There are areas like the ICT sector, pharmaceuticals in key areas, digital gaming, sectors where we have targeted growth. They are the sectors that are performing really well. And I think that is what we need to build upon. To see Irish exporting companies adding more than 3,000 jobs in 2012 is a real turnaround. Are there pathways for individual? Yes, indeed, there are. And of course, we also have the pathways for work approach. And in that approach, between Minister Quinn and Minister Burton, you have JobBridge, you have the new Momentum scheme, you have the Springboard scheme. These are all initiatives aimed to assist people who are now out of work to access the areas of employment that we are opening up through the enterprise approach that we're taking. So I think there is a clear momentum and route that I think people can see this plan is working. Yes, we continue to have ambitions to create 100,000 jobs. We know that we'll have to do better and continue to build on this. But as I said at the outset, to turn around from a situation where you were losing 90,000 jobs to be now adding jobs in the private sector, that is a significant turnabout.
Very briefly, here.
The live register figures, Minister, are still stuck at where they were 2 years ago, despite all the, your talk about job creation. And secondly, in relation to all the initiatives, I welcome those. JobBridge and all those schemes are welcome, but the CSO end-of-year figures show that there was just over 5,000 new places created during 2012. When we have, maybe 300,000 people looking for places on that scheme. So is it not time for, and again, this isn't a political charge, it's a system charge, that you have your department,